for all these people that are so concerned with children being indoctrinated into trans ideology or some shit, they really don't give like nearly as much a fuck about kids like literally being like converted to the realm of the afterlife after they get fucking blown away because little Timmy is fucking upset that you know, like someone took his fucking Magic the Gathering cards or something, right? Like, there's a million and one reasons why there have been school shootings in the US, and we haven't done nothing to fix any of the issues that come out of it. On school shootings and in firearms and all that shit, in general, I think it's fine for people to be able to own guns, but I would put a lot more restrictions on the kind of guns that we have in society now, because fuck all these school shootings. They happen with handguns, they happen with rifles, they happen with shotguns, whatever. We need to make it to where children are not able to easily access handguns. And if you have a child in the house, I think what they did with the parents with this most recent school shooting event, I think that that is a like totally fine thing to do. Negligent homicide. You bought your kid a gun. You knew that there was something fucking wrong with the child, right? Because he was saying some weird shit, right? You didn't secure that fucking gun. And when your child was called into the office for researching ammunition and saying things that, you know, were reminiscent of like what a school shooter would do, right? You still don't secure your gun? I'm sorry. Yeah, negligent homicide. I think that's totally fucking fine.
Was this person mentally ill? We have no idea. Even if the answer is yes, I don't think that that's an excuse.
Wait, do you guys actually want to see the most deranged take? Do y'all want to see the most deranged take in the entire fucking world?
He's now 15, and yet they chose this angelic-looking photo from a...
If you have seen this, all right, I'm going to rewind it. If you've seen this, don't spoil it for those who haven't, because no matter where you think no matter where you think this is going to go, all right, no matter where you think it's going to go, you're wrong, all right? Did you hear CTV's de-radicalization story to Joe Lewis? No. I'd be interested to see what you said to him. Well, he's praying.
Look at the photos of Ethan Crumbly people on social media and some media outlets are using. He's now 15, and yet they chose this angelic-looking photo from about when he was 10. What is the purpose of this when there are several other photos like his mugshot that could have been shown instead? This same sort of tactic is used in reverse against Black perpetrators and even victims. Rather than use their school photo of them smiling and looking like good kids, they use the meanest looking, most aggressive photo they can find on social media to portray them as villains. They attempt to portray them as people who either obviously would commit the heinous crime they did or victims who deserved it. They do this to placate a certain bias and mindset that the audience already holds, and the same looks to be happening in this case, showing Crumbly as this innocent-looking angelic white kid.
Yeah, we can all agree with this. Look at I mean, if you guys were, you know, if you're not like super zoomers, where you're like 12 years old and watching me right now, then you remember Trayvon Martin and how they were showing the most fucking sketchy fucking villainous looking pictures they possibly could, saying that he smoked weed and blah, blah, blah. He went to the fucking grocery store. He went to the fucking grocery store. He bought Skittles and Arizona tea, and then he got fucking murdered. Okay? So we could all agree with this, right?
That the audience already holds, and the same looks to be happening in this case. Showing Crumbly as this innocent-looking angelic white kid is intended to stoke fear and support a narrative that white people, no matter how nice they look, are domestic terrorists who we should all be afraid of. Look at the photos of Ethan Crumbly people.
Holy shit, what the fuck?
On social media and some. They do this to placate a certain bias and mindset that the audience already holds, and the same looks to be happening in this case. Showing Crumbly as this innocent-looking angelic white kid is intended to stoke fear and support a narrative that white people, no matter how nice they look, are domestic terrorists who we should all be afraid of.
Fucking schizo posting. What the fuck is that take? I've never seen one. So yeah, this is the most absolutely dog shit take I've ever seen in my entire life. All right. Okay, I saw some child pics of Trayvon when it aired. I remember specifically I remember at the time, my dad couldn't. My dad, and we've talked about this since then during 2020, how he couldn't conceive. All right, he couldn't conceive of someone just shooting a kid for walking around, right? He thought that Trayvon Martin had to have done something fucking wrong. I remember arguing with him in 2012 while I was in high school. Me and my older brother were so fucking mad at him for not seeing how obvious of a fucking murder it was, right? And now after after it's all said and done, he's come to realize like, yeah, like black people obviously get the shit end of the deal here in the United States. But at the time, like, they were showing all these scary pictures of him. I mean, like, maybe they showed some pictures of him as a kid, but the reason that my dad thought that, and the reason why so many people were willing to give Zimmerman the benefit of the doubt and say like, ah, yeah, this kid was a fucking criminal, was because they constantly showed pictures of Trayvon looking like a fucking gang member when he was a victim of a fucking crime. Right? I'll watch your thing right after this CTV.
And I think that we as a society need to start calling out evil where we see it. So let's just talk about the school shooting. So the first thing is that I don't know what we can do about
this.
That's
a handsome mugshot.
Periodically, I think 1 year ago, there was a school shooting about a year ago, and like a bunch of media outlets and stuff reached out to me. On Monday, I'm actually going to be speaking on a panel at the United Nations Counterterrorism division about violent extremism and like online communities. So it's just bizarre that like literally on Monday, like there's going to be a UN thing where we're going to be talking about this stuff. But I think that first of all, like my heart goes out to the community member who had to live through this. My heart goes out to like everyone else who had to live through this. Especially those that didn't get to live through it, and the parents and family members of those that didn't get to live through it. I'm going to need a second. I think I'm out of tissues. GG chat. So,
I mean, this is like a really rough topic, so I don't blame him for feeling emotional about it. We've been so desensitized. I was about to say, like, why does he need tissues? But we've been so desensitized to these things because they happen so fucking often that, you know, when someone now says, like, yo, I might need some tissues when I talk about this, it's like weird to me. But that shouldn't be weird to me. It should be incredibly fucking normal for people to be, like, incredibly upset to the point where they need tissues, right? Because, like, fuck. These are children getting fucking shot, you know? But that's not the world that I was brought up in. I was brought up in a world where school shootings, for some reason, are perfectly fucking normal, right? I believe in responsible gun ownership. I think all that shit's poggers as fuck, right? And I think that anyone that, you know, tries to advocate for people to be more safe with their firearms, that's all obviously good stuff. Just uncritically, you should always be more safe with your guns. And there's always something that you can improve on in terms of safety. But yeah, when I hear school shooting, I'm just like, oh, okay, well, what was this guy? Was this one like a white nationalist, or did a girl turn him down, or what's the reason for this one, right? And it's more about like the cause for that individual rather than like the actual reasons why children have easy access to firearms in the fucking first place, which is fucking wild. And that shouldn't be the conversation, right? And the conversation shouldn't be about, you know, should we be arming teachers in order to blast little Timmy away when he fucking gets turned down by Susie, right? Like, that's not we shouldn't be on this perpetual fucking arms race, whether it's the discourse that we've been having about fucking militias in regards to fucking Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, should we arm opposing militias just more so that the right-wing militias don't feel like they can just do whatever the fuck they want? Well, I don't think so. I think that we should just fucking disincentivize all militias, right? Or we should have some way to have militias without them being the norm. Because I don't think that a time in which we need militias is a time that is like just like your every average or your everyday average fucking normal historical period. If we need militias, well then we're kind of in a fucky position, right? So like I feel like we should be disincentivizing them and trying to find solutions so that we don't need them, right?
You know, I don't know what we do about this. Because I think sometimes there are problems in the world that we don't know what to do with, right?
Yeah.
So like there are a lot of problems out there where people say like, I don't know what we can do. And that's just not good enough, right?
True.
So like there are a lot of problems out there
Very
where
fucking true.
you can't say anymore, like, I don't know what we can.
No, hold on, really quick. Last thing I'm going to say about the militias, because I'm doing a segment right now and I don't want to get like super lost in the weeds. We don't need world peace for there to be no militias, right? Because we still have standing armies. We still have like police forces. We still have shit like that that can do what militias used to do when we didn't have either the funding or the ability to, you know, bats don't hurt you? Okay, good. Either the funding nor the ability to defend our neighborhoods, right? So like when we were in medieval fucking Europe, right, or in some fucking non what's the word I'm looking for, modern state. Yeah, I could see a reason for there to be a militia. Like the cops aren't going to come and fucking protect you, right? Or like if you get invaded by some foreign entity, there's not going to be anyone that comes through and saves you. But we shouldn't, like, especially as like the most powerful nation in the entire fucking world, we're probably at a point where we don't need a fucking militia to protect ourselves from foreign invaders, right? That's just not a problem that we're going to be dealing with on a regular basis because of the fact that we live in a modern fucking country, right? So yeah.
Can do. Because there's like literally people dying. Like, that's not an exaggeration. And this happens again and again, and it keeps happening. And I think that there's a lot that we don't really know how to approach this problem. So what we tend to do at Healthy Gamer is try to like look at things authentically, right? So we try to like be non-judgmental towards people. We try to treat them like, you know, give them space to like think and understand and try to figure out what's going on. And do I think that we need to understand the psychology of school shooters? Absolutely. But I think that there's like a flip side to this coin, which is the more that we propagate this kind of dialogue and like the more that, like, for example, there are studies, I believe, that show that increased media coverage of particular things like suicide or mass shooting actually propagates like some of those ideas and beliefs and like leads to more events. So there are studies on suicide clusters, for example, where when you like propagate like media coverage of a thing, that it increases the behavior of the thing. So personally at Healthy Gamer, I feel a little bit hamstrung in terms of approaching this in the way that we usually do. I don't know how to deal with this. Because I think that, you know, really exploring it could actually have the opposite effect. And so we want to understand the psychology of these people, hopefully for the goal of like altering their course. And my hope is that if you support people who are struggling, then they won't do bad things. But unfortunately, I don't think that that's true. I think what tends to happen in school shootings is we talk about mental illness, right? So we say like, oh, this person was depressed. And so there's like pathology of evil. Like that's what we do as a society now. Like as awareness of mental illness has grown, we've actually started to pathologize like evil. And as a psychiatrist, that sort of pisses me off because I think every time you label a school shooter as mentally ill, you're giving a bad name to people who struggle with mental illness. And to a certain degree, you're providing an excuse for the shooter. So I think this is an issue of dharma and adharma. Dharma being duty and adharma being not being your duty. And I don't know that this is a problem of mental illness. I think it simply could be a problem of evil. And one of the downsides of our
What does that
society
mean?
is that as we've stepped away from religion, we've stopped talking about sin. People don't talk about sin anymore, right?
Whoa, I don't know if I like where this is going. This feels really weird also, to try and talk about it in like a theological way when there are like real world issues. I don't like this. This is really fucking weird.
Because it's so tied up with religious concepts and beliefs and gets tangled up with other things that discussions of good and evil have been reduced to like, you know, discussions of psychiatry and psychology and like, you know, which in a sense is helpful. But I think that there's a certain point where you have to take responsibility for your actions, irrespective of like whether you're mentally ill or not. I also think as a society, the more that we sort of think about, oh, like maybe what the world needs is more therapy, like that may be true, and it almost certainly is. And that's the way that I would approach the problem. Like I would try to help the people that are in their infancy of becoming a school shooter and try to alter their course. And at the same time, there's a part of me that says like, this is an act of evil and there should be no excuses given. I do believe firmly as a psychiatrist that it is not your fault if you are mentally ill, but it is absolutely your responsibility. So I have sympathy for someone who struggles with alcohol addiction, but I do not provide for them a single excuse if they drive drunk and get into an accident and kill someone. This is where if you are struggling with an addiction or a mental health problem, it is your responsibility and it is up to you to take care of it. And I think failing in your duty to do that absolutely lays the blame at your feet.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I don't disagree with any of this, right? We can be understanding of someone's situation without giving them an excuse to do horrible fucking things, right?
So was this person mentally ill? We have no idea. Even if the answer is yes, I don't think that that's an excuse. And I think that we as a society need to start calling out evil where we see it. The second thing
I don't know
is,
what that means though.
You know, like, I know what I'm about to say is going to be perceived as political, and I guess it is. I don't get to determine what is political and what isn't political. But I'm about to talk about gun control, and most of what I base this on is, like, in my opinion, not political beliefs, but you could argue that they are political beliefs. It's like research out of HSPH or Harvard School of Public Health, where like there's a lot of research that's been done. There's some contrary research to this as well. So, for example, like Australia demographically is very similar to the United States, and the number of school shootings they have is like a fraction of what we have because they have strong gun control laws. There's counter evidence to that as well. So, for example, Massachusetts has stronger gun control laws, and there's some data that suggests that it doesn't actually reduce violent crime. But in my mind, like, and growing up,
but it reduces the amount of violent crime that can. It reduces the scale of the violent crime, right? So like we don't see mass shootings happen in England or in other, you know, industrialized nations because they generally have stricter gun control laws. Even if they do have the ability for you to own a gun, right? There's still the, you know, there's still enough control of those items, right? That it makes it to where only people that are responsible enough to own those weapons or those items in general are able to, you know, do anything with them. Like, I think that the gun laws in the US are so fucking whack. They're so fucking stupid. And the way that we go about trying to, wait, hold on. Before I go over there, I'm going to get my pumpkin seeds. The way that we go about legislating these things where it's like the ultimate, like, you should go all the way with it. Some people arguing that people should be able to own nukes if they fucking want to, and they have the means by which to purchase them. That shit's fucking insane to me, right? And there's obviously no fucking reason for anybody to have a nuke in like the private sector, right? The way that we talk about guns in the US is so fucking unhealthy and so fucking weird to me that I could just never fucking get behind the common discourse that goes on with gun control.
In Texas, I can like absolutely understand the love that people have for guns, and like I have neighbors and family members that really like guns, And that, like, that's totally fine. Like, I get that the Second Amendment is important to people. Like, I have nothing against all that. And I understand that there are people out there that like to hunt. It's a part of their family. It's a part of their tradition. It's part of their rights. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I understand that you guys like to hunt. But the truth of the matter is that every year there are people out there who literally hunt children. Like,
hey, can someone tell me if there's any hunting that you need a handgun for? Like, I've been hunting like many times throughout my life, right? I just went hunting over Thanksgiving, but I've never ever fired a handgun because I've never needed to. Dr. K just said it. Wait, what might, are you saying hunting children is what people hunt? Because it's so hard to fucking, from what I understand, it's really hard to hit a target with a handgun, right? But I haven't shot in like, what, 7 years? And then I go hunting and we sighted in a rifle. And once the scope was all calibrated or whatever the fuck, I was hitting a fucking $50 bullseye at fucking 70 yards with a rifle that I hadn't shot in fucking more than half a decade. So rifles are incredibly easy to use, right? They're incredibly easy to operate and for people to shoot. But I don't know why anyone would ever go hunting with a handgun. Is there anything?
Guns are race realist.
I guess not. If CTV is still in the chat and he knows anything that that
and then what
is
do you
often,
do? You shut
often
the fuck up.
Hunted with handguns, then that would be interesting to hear.
like, that's what's going on. That's not an exaggeration. Someone shows up with a school with a weapon and then they start hunting and they hunt other human beings. And so my question to the people who are like, I'm not trying to make it political, but like, if you are not in favor of gun control, then what I'm curious about is like, what's your plan?
And it's
like
not
that, really,
arming
that's
people.
what I want to understand. And this is where I'm not saying it like as a political belief. I don't say it as an indictment. I say it as like a medical doctor and a public health professional. Like, what's your plan to protect those people?
They don't.
So it's
have a
fine.
plan.
Like,
They
I have
don't
nothing
care.
against the Second Amendment. I have nothing against like you owning a gun, and I have nothing against you going hunting, provided it's not kids. And so what I want to understand is like, for people who are anti-gun control laws, like, literally, what's your plan? And you don't get to say, I don't know, or it shouldn't be this way, because this is science. This is fact. This happened yesterday. Someone showed up at a school with Michigan and started opening fire. So like,
And the
what are you
parents
going to do
knew.
about that? So it's fine. If you want guns,
And the parents knew that the kid was fucking crazy, right? The school knew that the kid was fucking crazy. The school tried to get the parents to do stuff, right? Literally the day of the shooting, or the weekend before, on Friday, the weekend before, the kid was purchased a gun by from his father, right? He was caught searching ammunition on his phone. There's got to be something that we can do to try and get people to be held responsible so that this doesn't happen anymore.
it's like totally fine. But like, there needs to be a plan in place to literally protect children from dying. And I don't think that that's too much to ask. I think that we've gotten to the point where like, literally their plan is to, I heard about this recently where
Okay, can someone tell me why the fuck my mouse isn't showing up on the goddamn game? Because it's making my life very difficult right now.
they were building a new school. And the architect designed the school with curving hallways. And why did they design the school with curving hallways?
Because
To reduce the line of sight for potential school shooters. Like, this is the plan. Like, we're going to get, you're telling me that schools are now being designed by FPS developers?
Yeah, I know.
Like, are we going to have random spawns for like armor and double damage and teleporters? Like, that's literally what
They give all these answers like curving hallways or little alcoves that children can hide in while there's a fucking school shooter. It's like, bro, holy shit, is this really the only option? Is this the option that we're left with? I don't feel like we should be accommodating the fucking school shooters, right? Or like building accommodations for like the eventual school shooters, we should be stopping the school shooters as a preemptive measure, right? We should be making it more difficult for there to be school shooters in the fucking first place, instead of just saying, well, there's always going to be people that are evil in the world, right? So we should just, build fucking curvy hallways in high schools, right? This is not the answer. Putting fucking bulletproof fucking plates in children's backpacks so that when a fucking school shooter comes through, they have +3 armor is so fucking cringe to me. And it's obviously not the fucking answer. Like, why is this what we're doing? For all these people that are so concerned with children being indoctrinated into trans ideology or some shit, they really don't give like nearly as much a fuck about kids like literally being like converted to the realm of the afterlife after they get fucking blown away because little Timmy is fucking upset that like someone took his fucking Magic the Gathering cards or something, right? Like, there's 1,000,001 reasons why there have been school shootings in the US, and we haven't done nothing to fix any of the issues that come out of it.
What this has come to, like, your solution is to design a school, and Costco, by the way, started selling bulletproof backpacks.
Yeah.
It's like, are you serious that this is what your solution is? That we're going to give kids bulletproof backpacks and design schools so that they don't have line of sight to prevent school shooters? I mean, if that's really your answer, I guess it's a answer, but it feels like a terrible answer to me. And on the one hand, like, like FPS designers should be designing video games, not schools.
True.
Like, that's not their job. Their job is to design, hallways for video games, not for real life, where there are like 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds who are like walking down the hallway. This is absurd. Yeah, so, I recognize once again that what I said was like political in nature, because gun control is a political issue. And that too, by the way, like boggles my mind that issues like COVID and literally children dying in schools have become political issues as opposed to issues of public health or science or medicine. It's like, in my mind, those things are quite divorced, but that could be like my ignorance. And so I just want to understand, like, for people who are in favor of gun control, like, what's the plan, yo? Like, because this keeps happening. People who are anti-gun control, like it's cool. Like, you can have whatever beliefs you want to, but then, like, what are we going to do about that? Like, what's the practical, like, what does it look like? And I encourage everyone, I recognize that people may want to bucket me into a political party or a set of political beliefs based on my statements, but chances are you'll be surprised at how incorrect you are based on my bucketing. And you may try to reverse bucket me based on that statement, and you'll be wrong there too. So I think the next thing that I want to talk about is, like, what we can do about it. So I want to share with you guys, I think, a major problem, a major public health nightmare that is already happening. And I don't think many people are aware of what it is. And that is online drift. So there is an interesting thing happening to our minds and on the internet that I don't think many people are aware of. All of the major content platforms are responsible for this. Oddly enough, I don't blame them, because I think that they set out with what I think was the best of intentions, and it's just a consequence that it's an emergent property that no one expected when they put together the pieces. And that's online drift. So basically, any content creation platform that you look at, or content amalgamation platform, will serve you things that you like. And so what tends to happen is that there have been scientific studies written about this, where, like, you start off with some mild piece of content, and then over time, the platform will serve you more and more extreme pieces of content. Mm-hmm. So there's literally this concept called online drift, where you kind of start in the middle, and then you start, like, moving towards extremes. So I think, like, good examples of this are, there are, like, many subreddits around loneliness, right? So there's, like, Forever Alone, and then there's also, like, relationship advice, which is, like, more in the middle, and then you get to Forever Alone, and then you maybe get to, like, FDS or incel communities or red pill or like whatever. You get to these like communities that hold very strong beliefs. I'm not necessarily suggesting that any of those beliefs are bad, but this concept is happening where the internet, by virtue of the way that online drift happens, it's fracturing us as a society. The second thing about online drift that's really important is that it is emotionally engaging content that people select the most. So what happens is, like, if you look at Twitter, like, why is Twitter such a popular platform? It's because 160 characters is a great way to emotionally engage people. If you look at the people who are very popular on Twitter, they're not necessarily right. They're the ones who emotionally engage their audience like time and time again.
Yep.
And the people who agree with them think that they're very, very right. And the people who disagree with them think they're so idiotic. But that person succeeds because they've actually emotionally engaged both sides of the argument. So in a weird way, content creation is drifting towards emotionally engaging content instead of like accurate content or helpful content, right? It's all about like what you're going to click on. And so what people tend to click on is that which is emotionally engaging. And so you end up with this like combined process of like emotional engagement plus like content being presented to you, which is more and more emotionally charged, less nuanced, less logical, less like, you know, dyadic, right? It becomes like very monotheistic in nature. And so over time, what's happening is like we're sort of like creating these echo chambers, right? And that's what the internet is doing. The internet is funneling us into echo chambers. And one of the things that we've seen is if you read like manifestos of school shooters and things like that, you'll see like a lot of echo chamber mentality in those kinds of things. And so I don't know exactly what to do about this, but I absolutely see this as a problem. So what I'm going to say now is that you have to be really, really careful about the safe space that you gravitate to. And this is another thing that started to happen, which is that safe spaces have started to become breeding grounds of toxicity. So what happened is like people didn't want contrary opinions, right? So like, let's say you've got like, you know, a gender oriented sub. So you can look at 2X chromosomes or like men's rights or like whatever. So I'm going to talk about subreddits because that's what I'm familiar with. But you're going to have a gender oriented community, which understandably the gender has had bad experiences with people of the opposite gender. So we're going to create a safe space just for us. And I think that has a lot of utility to it, has a lot of value to it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Pretty nice.
Over time, though, what tends to happen is as we knock out contrary opinions, as we knock out discussion, because let's be fair, a lot of the people who come in pretending to discuss are not actually trying to discuss, they're trying to attack. So I understand why it happens. Over time, what tends to happen is we create this echo chamber that then like propagates like more and more extreme views. And then you end up with communities like FDS or Red Pill, right? Which is kind of ironic because they're sort of the same community. It's just fascinating. And so this is something that's a serious problem that I think as a society, we need to be super careful about. Like we need to be aware that content creation platforms, as they chase emotional engagement and dopaminergic clicks, what they're going to be doing is radicalizing us in the process. And this is where you can say like, oh my God, the content creation platforms are...
I think that we should, like, this is like the single best argument to, for getting rid of the internet. Like, unironically, the internet has radicalized so many fucking people into dumb fuck positions that I honestly don't know what to do about that sort of thing outside of simply saying, oh, well, you know, like, get rid of it. Like that's like the only thing that I could possibly think of. If we get rid of the internet, then maybe we'll be okay to, we'll be okay going forward and people will stop being radicalized, but it's an imperfect solution and it's a solution that nobody actually wants, but I don't know what the actual solution would be outside of forcing platforms to, be completely neutral on everything, but I don't know how we could even do that. Like everything is so like difficult in terms of like trying to find a solution through like legislation other than telling people like just don't be fucking stupid and actually look at what the fucking news article says instead of assuming what it says based off of the fucking headline, you know?
Bad. Facebook is evil, Google is evil, Twitch is evil. I don't think that that's fair. I mean, you can criticize them and they may be evil. I'm not saying it's not my place to say. What I'm saying is that like my focus tends to be on individuals. And so you are just as complicit as the content platform, right? Because you're the one who's clicking it. So I don't think it's fair to just blame. And that's another thing that tends to happen in situations like this is everyone loves to blame the things that don't involve them. So we saw this a lot during the pandemic where everyone was like, doctors are the heroes, nurses are the heroes. Like, oh my God, these people are so great. Like they're amazing human beings. And then doctors and nurses started saying, hey, you need to get vaccinated. And then suddenly people were like, screw you guys. It's the medical establishment.
Very fucking true.
And so it's very easy to applaud something that doesn't cost you anything, and even easier to criticize something and tell someone else across the street to change. It's really easy to say like, oh, Facebook is evil, Twitch is evil, YouTube is evil, Reddit is evil, TikTok is evil. You know, I'm trying to be like egalitarian and toss the evilness all over the place. But the truth of the matter is that it's easy to say that because you don't have to change, right? Oh, it's their fault. I don't have to do anything differently. And this is exactly how we end up with school shooters. Because for far too long, people have refused to take responsibility. So the NRA doesn't take responsibility. You know, YouTube doesn't take responsibility. Reddit doesn't take responsibility. The government doesn't take responsibility. Legislators don't take responsibility. Individuals don't take responsibility. Parents don't take responsibility. Friends don't take responsibility. Bullies don't take responsibility. Oh yeah, like it's always like someone else needs to fix this problem because they're the problem. And it is because every human mind thinks that way that we end up with the situation that we have. So people in our community ask, how do I do my dharma? What is my dharma? And they think it's some grand thing. Right? They think it's like, oh, how do I save the world? How do I become a person who impacts other people? How do I live my life with purpose? So this is what I'd say. Why don't you start by being a decent human being on a very small scale? Why don't you start by not bullying someone else? Why don't you start by not dogpiling the kid who's been, bullied? Right? Why don't you start by being decent in chat to people who come on?
I guess this is possibly the only thing that we can say about this, because there's no easy legislative answer. What legislative answer could there possibly be for this? I don't think that there is one necessarily, which fucking sucks.
That's pretty nice.
It really does seem like we're just kind of doomed to deal with this until the end of fucking time. We're almost done with it, CTV.
Why don't you start by being decent to the parent that we had recently? Be decent to the women that come on. Be decent to the people that you disagree with. Start by being a decent human being. That's your dharma. That's the beginning of it, and that's the end of it. Start by accepting responsibility for what you can change instead of blaming the world for not fixing things. We see this with our generation too, and I'm complicit with it. Where I say, oh, the boomers screwed us.
Sure.
And it's I've been able to vote for 21 years. And so for the first 8 years of my life, I didn't vote. The boomers didn't screw us. I screwed us. You screwed us. If any of y'all are not participating in the process, if any of y'all are sitting at home and not doing anything about this problem, then you are complicit. It's the only way it works, man, is if everyone starts taking responsibility for whatever they can do. Right? And this is the kind of thing where we even see oil companies do this. So I saw this hilarious thing. I think that BP or some other oil company was what are you going to do to commit to changing, to fixing the climate? What is your climate change pledge? Hashtag climate change pledge. And someone else was I pledge not to dump 5 billion barrels of oil into the ocean. Right? That's my pledge. And so everyone's talking about recycling and using non-reusable straws, which is fine. I'm glad people are doing that. So that is like people who are like, you know, not buying plastic straws are like a step in the right direction. But individual corporations need to accept responsibility as well. So this is where, like, as a human, if you are gravitating towards communities, participating in communities that are toxic, if you are not exposing yourself to contrary views with a genuine eye for discussion, then you are part of the problem. And Reddit is part of the problem. Google is probably part of the problem. Twitch is part of the problem. Everyone's a part of the problem. That's the whole thing. Like, it's a worldwide problem. So it's like everyone has some role to play. Even if it is not, this is the other thing. So even if you are not part of the problem, you can absolutely be part of the solution. And that is part of your dharma. So the only way this works is if, like, we all do what we can do, even if it isn't our fault. And so if you want to know what doing your dharma is, it's like, be a decent human being, which is harder than it sounds. I make it sound simple, but it's very hard. It's be careful what you consume on the internet. Try to be compassionate towards people that you dislike and who may disagree with you, and we'll get to that later. And that's your dharma. The next thing that I want to talk about is like the science of trauma, and sort of almost responding to the person who posted, who I don't want to show the post, just for the preservation of privacy and whatnot. So there's some things that, you know, I don't know if people like educate, like I'm really curious, like what that school in Michigan is going to do for their students afterward. Right. So I haven't seen, and maybe this is just me, but like I haven't seen any clear messaging on the science of trauma or how you should respond after a school shooting. Like, what should you do? So once again, this is not like very well researched. I mean, it's sort of well researched in the sense that I've learned a lot about it. So like I've got a lot of research like in my brain, but it's not exhaustively studied or cited or up to date. So here's what y'all need to understand about trauma. So the first thing is that psychologists discovered that processing trauma is useful. Okay. So this is like discovery number one. So then what people decided, psychologists were like, oh, there's like genocide going on in Africa. Let's go and therapize them. So a bunch of like mental health professionals showed up and they like processed trauma with people immediately after genocide. So you'll have these like survivor camps, right? So refugee camps, asylum seekers, things like that. And we're going to make the world a better place. We're going to go in and process that trauma for them. We're going to fix them. That's what we're going to do. And so what they actually discovered is that forcing people to process their trauma makes things worse. So what tends to happen after a traumatic event is that we feel numb. We dissociate, right? We feel detached from all sorts of things. You don't really like, you just kind of feel numb. Food doesn't taste great. Food doesn't taste bad. Things don't seem to be fun. You're kind of like in this fog in your head. You're sort of like numb is the best way to describe it. It's sort of like the volume on life is turned down. The brightness on life is turned down. You kind of unplug. You don't feel connected with yourself. You don't feel connected with your life. There's a dissociative process that goes on. This dissociative process protects you from the negative emotions, right? Because you just went through something that was traumatic. So there's like a very like clear physiologic process that goes on when we feel strong emotions. Our hormones go through the roof. Our brain starts to activate in all these weird ways. We enter periods of strong neuroplasticity, which means that our brain rewires. So if you look at the limbic circuit of the brain, the limbic circuit is the emotional circuit. It is right next to the hippocampus, which is the learning circuit. Our emotions and our learning circuitry is very closely tied together, which is why the greatest teacher for human beings is negative emotion. This is why you can be married to someone for 40 years, see them cheating once, and divorce them. Because 40 years of good behavior can be wiped away with one bad lesson, right? Like that's just how learning works. You can use a stove every day for 40 years, and like one day something happens, a spark lights, your house burns down, and you're like, I ain't never touching a stove again. Your brain will have like PTSD from having stoves in the house. That is absolutely the way that we are wired. So forcing re-experiencing of trauma essentially reactivates all of those negative emotions, reactivates the hormonal surges, the physiologic changes that come with the first round of trauma that wreck your body, by the way. Because remember that when you're undergoing a traumatic experience, it's a survival situation. So your body activates all of these circuits to survive the next 10 minutes, no matter what happens tomorrow. So in that moment, what your body and brain do is they go all in on survival, and they will wreck the house as a result. The way that I kind of think about it is, let's say you're about to leave for the airport and you can't find your passport.
Do I really not have a
and your
bucket?
Uber is 3 minutes away. You don't care about organizing things. You're dumping things off the shelves. You're like looking in here. You're emptying out drawers. It's a frenzy of a mess to find your passport within the next 3 minutes. And in those 3 minutes of shooting for looking for that one goal, you will wreck your entire house as a result. This is what happens physiologically when you go through trauma. Your cortisol level shoots through the roof. Your insulin goes through the roof. Your decreases, actually. Your blood sugar shoots through the roof. All of these systems in your body go haywire for the sake of temporary survival. And we'll clean up the mess tomorrow. So when you force people to re-experience trauma before they are ready, and this is important as well for certain techniques of meditation. That's why I do not do open awareness techniques of meditation with traumatic individuals. Their mind is working really, really hard to pack away those memories. They've worked really, really hard to like bury them in the basement and put locks and chains and weights on top so that the trapdoor can never open. And so when you get clinicians that force people to process their trauma, or you get meditation techniques that let the trauma come up, then you actually re-traumatize the person, trigger all of those physiologic disruptions, which result in neuroscience changes. Those neuroscience changes will in turn affect your behaviors, your patterns of thought, etc. So don't do that. Don't force people to talk about things. So then the question is, what should you do? Play video games. So this is one of the really fascinating things. There was a study that was done where they had trauma survivors play Tetris, I think. And what they found is that Tetris is actually like really, really beneficial for trauma survivors. Okay? So I know it sounds kind of weird, but like this is where like, what do video games do? They cause us to dissociate, right? That's the problem, is they cause us to forget life and push away all of our cares and worries and problems. And as long as I'm playing Dota or League of Legends or Valorant or whatever, like I'm not worrying about any of my stuff. So like no big deal. So this is one of the situations in which video games can truly be therapeutic because they assist in the dissociative process, right? And this is where people ask, are video games healthy or not healthy? No such thing. Every tool has a place. Is a hammer a good tool or a bad tool? It's a hammer. If you drop it on your foot, it's bad. If you use it improperly, you're going to break a finger. But used in the right way, it can be very helpful. Video games are exactly the same. So oddly enough, I would encourage people to like follow what your mind tells you to do. If you want to veg out and play a video game, you just want to play Terraria for like 8 hours after a traumatic event, I'd say go for it. Let your mind do what it needs to. It's going to be subconsciously processing stuff, and that's actually okay. So what should you do after a traumatic event? Play a video game. There's actually data to support that.
I guess I don't like super disagree with most of what he said. I don't like the idea of trying to make this focus on evil because one of the tactics. Excuse the fuck out of me. Thank you. One of the things that people will do is they'll just say like, well, there will always be evil in the world. So like, why are we going to be why are we even legislating off of this? Because there's just evil people in the world and we shouldn't be punished for the actions of evil people, right? They should be the ones that are punished, right? Which just leads to like super hardcore punitive measures when it comes to the criminal justice system. It doesn't really actually, it doesn't actually like help anything when we do that, right? People can't get on board with legislating against evil. But what we can legislate against is evil acts so that they don't happen anymore, right? I don't know if anyone has ever seen the, what is it? The I Hate Mondays alt-right playbook by, what's his name? The Innuendo Studios thing. But people will just be like, I don't really want to talk about this because that person's obviously evil and like, yeah, what do you gotta do? It's a Monday. Like, shit just sucks sometimes, right? And there's nothing that you can do about that. Just, let's fucking get back to the rest of the week, right? It's just a Monday and we'll forget about this later until the next Monday that happens. Oh, if it's just like a difference of evil based on, but again, like that's one reason why I don't want it to be a theological thing, because if you're talking from like the theological standpoint, then like, yeah, like what all we can do is thoughts and prayers. Fuck the thoughts and prayers shit. That shit helps fucking nobody ever. It's never helped anyone. Hey guys, guess what? Guess how many times prayer has stopped a fucking mass shooting? Guess how many times prayer has brought those people back to fucking life that got fucking shot? Fucking exactly 0 times. Exactly fucking 0 times. All right. I come from a family that's like very, very religious. Okay. My dad was a fucking pastor. And even my dad is like, yeah, no, like this is obviously something that we got to fucking fix. All right. We're not gonna fucking thoughts and prayers our way out of this. There's real fucking issues in the world that need real fucking solutions. And theology is never going to get us out of the fucking problems that we have. There is a de-radicalizing force out there. If it's you, CTV, I'm scared for the world.